So this is called How Not to Apply for a Design Job. I have been living this for the last couple months, maybe more, because we've had a few openings and I've looked at a lot of portfolios over that time. Um, but before we get into sort of the meat of this, let's just, why should you even listen to me? What do I know about this? Well, the reason why I'm up here is I am a design director. I've been a design sort of hiring manager for the last period of time. I've worked a lot of places. If you looked at my LinkedIn, you'll see my background is quite schizophrenic. I've bounced back and forth between IC roles and manager roles, and you know, I don't claim to have all the answers with this content, but I will attest to the fact that I have made almost all of these mistakes myself. So I'm not, shaming anyone for some of the stuff that you're going to see here, but because I did it, I did all of these almost. There's a couple that I didn't do, and I'll stick to that. Um, I have had a few wins. I've been able to land a few places that gave me some great opportunities, and but it also doesn't discount the fact that I've put out hundreds, maybe thousands of applications over my career that have literally ended up in a garbage bin. And I know that for a fact because I'm on the other side now. I see it every day. So hopefully some of this experience can benefit you all. And with that, let's get into it. Um, so, as you've already been warned, there are quite a few Star Wars references in this presentation. So just get used to it. Um, The first section is the most painful stuff I've seen. And unfortunately, I see this often. I see these things happening way too much. Um, this is kind of a no-brainer. If you're going to apply for a design job, I need to see what you've done. You'd actually be shocked at how often this happens. Um, it still blows my mind every day. Um, this is not as bad as the first, but it happens so often now, and I think there's more of a tendency to like lock portfolios down. If you're going to do it, just send the password. Don't, don't make me go begging for it. The reason why, I'm not opposed to password protecting. I understand why it happens. I understand why we do it. But what you have to realize is if that piece of information doesn't come through to me, it basically stops your application in its tracks. I will often reach out to HR or the TA team to be like, hey, we're missing this. But at that moment, your process has ended, and I'm off looking at 3 other portfolios that look interesting. So it's really just in your best interest to give me everything I need. Um, I did this one so many times. Uh, I've applied for many roles that I'm not qualified for, had no business applying for. It's super common. I understand we're all aiming high and want to like climb the ladder. I get it, but it's hard for someone in my position to really digest your work and take it into like consideration. And sort of the obvious next step is like, well, how do I know? Like, what am I qualified for? What am I not qualified for? Um, the first bullet point here, I can't emphasize this enough. Just read the job description. I know it sounds a little crazy. Um, I'm not, I will often scan. I have done this. But if you read the job description, you're realistic about your skills and experience. Um, if the job says you need 3 years of experience and you've had 2 internships, that doesn't quite add up. And it's very obvious, and it's, you're not gonna move forward. Um, I know that job descriptions these days are crazy. Um, they are copy pasted unicorn dreams of a fever induced hiring manager. Um, it's a red flag when you see a job description that asks for 10 years of Figma experience, video editing, Ruby on Rails knowledge, and light housekeeping. Just run away. Don't bother. But if the job description is well written and you take stock of what you see there, and ask yourself, do I have the majority of these skills or experiences? Then go for it. A little data. from our friends at Harvard Business Review. Men apply for a job when they meet 60% of a job description. Women apply only if they meet 100% of a job description. This is a sad fact. And I, I don't expect someone to walk in the door here or anywhere I've worked to have every bullet on a job description. That's not my expectation. I can't speak for other hiring managers, but you know, I expect someone to hit the key stuff and be willing to jump in and learn. The next one is quite interesting. Um, this has actually happened twice in my time as a hiring manager. The first time was a little while ago. Someone reached out on LinkedIn. Luckily, it wasn't public. They messaged me directly, and they basically said that I didn't look at their portfolio, that that I had disrespected them in some way. And first, it wasn't true. I did look at the portfolio. Second, questioning someone's professionalism without any facts is kind of dangerous. I don't know who does that. I understand people get stressed, but it's not a good idea. The second one, also again, luckily they reached out via LinkedIn message privately, but they actively were like, "You don't know what you're doing." They claimed that they were totally qualified for the job and that I should reconsider my judgment. And they also implied that I didn't understand my own job description. Um, it's pretty cool. I was like, wow, that's just bold. I'm not suggesting at all that you shouldn't stand up for yourself, that you shouldn't, fight for what you think you want. But I also, would recommend that you sort of think through the sort of what result do you want from that action? Um, you know, Going on the offense is probably not going to get you what you want. Uh, the design world is very small. As a group was coming in, I see a lot of familiar faces, and it's really cool. Like the design community is so small, we're so connected. So, when you do stuff like that and you create a bad experience, people remember. And on the flip side, if you have a great, interaction with somebody, they remember. And while a role might not be perfect for my team, I know other hiring managers. I might be able to put you in touch with somebody that's perfect for what you do. So just think about it. Um, the second section, these are like less egregious problems, but things I see quite often. Um, Bigger companies, and this happens not as much at the scale that we are right now, but you'll see a lot of open roles. And there's a tendency to, oh, I'm going to apply for that one. I'm going to apply for that one. I'm going to apply for that one. It's not like the worst thing you can do because I understand the motivation. I have literally done this one too, so not blaming anybody. Uh, but the people who are filtering these applications will notice, and it doesn't really put you in the best light. It makes you kind of come off as a little desperate, and usually you're not the best fit for 10 roles. I don't think that's possible, but one of those could be the one that you are. So rather than using a shotgun approach, let's try to be a little more strategic and surgical. Um, Cover letters. We've all heard you have to write a cover letter. Okay, I kind of changed my mind on that one. I used to think this was like mandatory. I will admit I don't read all the cover letters. Can be totally honest. I do read them if I'm on the fence. Like if I've looked at the portfolio and I'm like, there's some good stuff here, but I need to understand a little more of where they're coming from, I might dig into a cover letter. But like, I can't think of the times that a cover letter has swayed me in some dramatic way if their work wasn't good. If the work's not good, I don't think I can use them. So, you know, I'm not saying they're a bad idea. I think in the right circumstances, and if you really feel like passionately about something, by all means express that, put it in your application. But I'm just telling you from my personal workflow, they don't get read a lot of times. Other hiring managers may disagree. Just telling you my point of view. Uh, this is one that I did forever. I did this I'm trying to think of how long ago I finally changed my portfolio, but it was way too long. I put every single project I had ever done, um, every side project, every freelance project, all the fun side projects that I was doing just, as explorations. I thought I needed to showcase every single tool in my tool belt. Um, I was proud of the work I was doing. I think we all are. I was proud of like the things I was learning technically, and um, but I didn't really think about the person on the other end of the funnel. Um, I didn't think about the hiring manager. I just, from the hiring manager's perspective, you I know because I was doing this. I looked crazy. And you're like, how does someone parse all of this information if you're showing them this wide, crazy range? Um, what are they supposed to look at? Uh, when I finally realized that like I needed to tell a story with my work and that I needed to kind of demonstrate the skills that they were looking for, everything changed. I got way more interviews, way more calls. Kind of annoying. Um, I'm starting to get into nitpicky territory here. These are things that probably won't stop me from looking at your work, um, unless like maybe I'm in a bad mood, or if I'm hungry, or if like I'm in between 6 meetings and I have 5 minutes to look at a portfolio. Um, and actually, you know what? That sounds like today. Sounds like yesterday too. So yeah, it happens a lot. Uh, This one, I'm also guilty of this. I've done this so many times. We're all trying to get an edge. We all want to like find that crack in the wall of the company. It's not the worst thing you can do. I get it. And if you write a nice note and maybe you actually have a personal connection, it makes a little more sense. But just kind of the cold call sometimes feels a little off-putting as a hiring manager. But if you've done it, I've done it. Raise my hand, I've done it. Um, so what are you supposed to do? Uh, if you've worked like in design long enough, and I've worked in design a long time, you will experience negative things. I've been laid off twice. I have been fired. I've been forced out of jobs. I have quit when I shouldn't have quit. I have been part of an acquisition, which sounds cool, except when you're not getting any money out of it and you're just part of the next round of layoffs after the acquisition. Um, like I know the job market right now is really tough. Um, I've heard it from all the people I've been interviewing. Um, I've been there. It's not fun, uh, but it won't last forever. These things come in cycles. So, I think I'm starting to see some thawing, but I will acknowledge like we're in a weird time, and it's not anybody's fault. This is just the lay of the land right now. So, how can I provide some guidance? I can't speak for all hiring managers, but I think if you do start with some empathy for the end user, which in this case is the hiring manager, someone in my position, it might make the difference. So if you're thinking about like user personas, we all love personas. I can tell you about my days. My days are filled with meetings. When I'm hiring, I get an extra dose of meetings, which come in the form of meetings with HR and TAs, talent acquisition, uh, interviews take a lot of time. So, and the work, like the day-to-day work, does not stop. Like the fires keep coming. There's still work to do. I'm still, managing a team. So when you are building your application, when you're doing your resume, when you're building, your portfolio for me to look at, keep that experience in mind. Think about how much time I'm going to have to look at your work and what do you want me to take away in that. I try to spend at least 15 minutes. It depends on the day. Um, but every hiring manager is different. I've heard from some hiring managers they get like 3 minutes. It really depends. So process. Um, my process might be unique. I will admit that at the outset. I I've talked to a bunch of hiring managers over the years, and I've worked a couple different places, so I've seen different processes. Um, I always start with the portfolio. I will intentionally ignore a resume. I go straight to the work. This is something that I personally try to do as like a way to minimize bias. Um, it's not perfect, but I'm trying to understand what their taste level is. What have they worked on? What are their strengths and weaknesses? I don't get overly excited or overly bummed about like the content of the project work. I understand that some of us have been lucky enough to work for like a big brand or a well-known like company, but that doesn't necessarily translate to great work. They don't correlate. So I'm trying to find people who, if given the chance, can do amazing things ultimately. And the portfolio is my first step at like trying to decipher that. Um, it's not a perfect vehicle, but it's the best thing we have. After that, I jump into the resume. If I've seen good work, let's see a little bit more about their history. I look for the same stuff as everybody else. Where did they work? Where did they go to school? Um, any interesting side projects or, anything that kind of piques my interest. I have a personal pet peeve about resumes longer than one page. I've seen I've seen four, I've seen longer. Um, but ultimately the whole point of getting here is like I want to put somebody in an opportunity to excel, to learn, to grow, and contribute to art of problem solving. And the resume is the next data point in that process. My next step, and this is probably different for other people, I do a screening call, and I will get on the phone. And it's intentionally the phone. I don't want to do a video call. I just want to talk. Um, Faces and Zoom, there's like weird baggage that comes with it for me. I'd rather just have a nice conversation. Um, I want to have kind of an informal chat. I want to know like a little bit of how they think, how they talk about their work, try to gauge some of their motivations in doing design work. Uh, that's a lot to ask on a 30-minute call. um, but I try my best to really kind of, I don't know, get a sense of who you are as a candidate. And like, will you fit the role that I'm, trying to fill, and like, will you work for the company? After that, we get to the fun stuff, portfolio presentation. This is a very different step than me looking at your portfolio. Um, this is not a rehash of that. And I've seen this happen in this stage, and it's not pretty. Because what I'm looking for at this point is what I want to know more about how you communicate your design ideas. Uh, it's not enough to do great work. To actually ship work, you need to be able to work with other people. And for that, you need to be able to communicate your ideas. You need to be able to speak and influence people and really, work with others collaboratively. And this portfolio presentation is your first chance to prove that you can do that. You need to, you're presenting to the design team in our case here. So, you're going to be in a room of like-minded people, and hopefully that's a great conversation. Once we get through that step, we move to sort of the last stage. Here at Art of Problem Solving, we call it HQ Day. I've heard it called other things at other companies, but ultimately it's sort of the last stage before the decision. Here, I like what we do at Art of Problem Solving. We kind of have people come in. Everything is done virtually these days, but they meet with a bunch of different product teams. And what that does is it gives them an opportunity to talk to actual product teams, kind of see what we're chewing on day to day. They can ask questions, we can ask questions. It's a good back and forth, and they get a glimpse of kind of like what we work on every day. I like this structure. At other companies, I've kind of used different models, but usually it's sort of a combination of interviews with different folks that you'd be interacting with day to day. Um, I will say at Apple, the stage was brutal. It was like 7 or 8 30-minute interviews with everybody on the team that I was interviewing for, sometimes one person, sometimes two at a time. And this was after like months of phone and video interviews. Not intimidating at all. Um, um, my interview style at this stage is pretty informal. I don't have a set of questions that I'm like checking off. I know other people like to do that. Um, I want to know like, is this person going to work well with the team? And um, I we don't have to be besties. That's not in the cards. That's not part of the calculation. But I need to be able to communicate with you. I need to be able to like have a common respect in terms of professionalism and like the goals. We need to be able to align on goals. Um, I review everybody's notes from the interview process. So, during this day, you're talking to maybe a half dozen people, maybe more. I take everybody's input, and it's totally normal for some people to be like, some people to be, yes, this person's amazing. It's my job as the hiring manager to decipher all that and come up with the ultimate next step, which is decision. Do we move forward? Do we not? Um, this is the hardest part for the hiring manager. We've already sort of spent so much time together, sort of virtually and over email and whatnot. Um, I've been on both sides of this. I know the stress. I know the time commitment involved, and it's a lot of work. Like this whole process is a lot of work. It takes time. Um, I will encourage you all to remember that like whatever the result of this phase, uh, again, the design community is small. Our paths may cross again. Um, Maybe in not in this role, but the next role. Um, and ultimately, this is going to sound weird, but not all these decisions are purely based on your skill set. There are so many factors that go into giving someone an offer or not. Um, like culture, personality, makeup of the team, project work that I see coming down the pipeline, the maturity of the design culture. And this is nothing about you. This is about us. Tools, and a dozen other factors that like play a part in this decision. Um, do not see the whatever decision comes out of this as a ruling of your worth. Um, it's way more complicated than that. It's um, it's messy and it's not a perfect science. And I think I have a pretty good record of hiring good people. I like to think I'm biased, of course, with the people I've hired. I think they're great, but you know, it's not that simple. It's not a formula. So what have we learned? Um, First, please include your portfolio and a password. This is non-negotiable. Do not forget this. Um, Try to apply for roles that match your experience and skill set. Just be honest with yourself. It's not easy, but it'll help everybody. Don't attack the gatekeeper. It's never a good idea. I don't. There's probably a scenario where it makes sense, but I haven't seen it. Um, don't show me everything. Tell me a story. Um, Human beings are wired for stories. That's what we remember. Um, and if you tell me a story that's interesting and fun and unique, I will remember you. Um, I can guarantee it. Uh, and last, empathy is crucial. There is a human being, someone like me, on the other end of this process. And if you give me the right tools, I can, help me help you. It's very, literally, I'm looking at the last role that we just filled. We had 363 applications. That is a lot of portfolios. Um, I try to look at almost all of them. So it's a lot of time. So with that, Q&A. This is actually hopefully the most interesting part. Um, I'm going to kind of cycle through a couple slides as we talk, um, because I don't think for one second that I have all the answers on this subject. I asked a few of my smart hiring manager friends to kind of weigh in on some of these topics. So I'll cycle through those as we ask questions. So I don't know. Who wants to start? Who's got a question about any of this or just, I don't know, let's get started. Yeah.
So you mentioned before during the interview, you want to make sure that your candidate has the same goals as you. Do you have any examples of what that would be?
So I can speak for kind of where we are right now as an organization. So when I'm trying to build this team out, I'm looking for people who really are optimized for learning. We're an education company. We're kind of growing and building right now. So I want to find people who, want to learn, want to grow, want to like obviously do great design work because we're not trying to deliver garbage. We're trying to do great things. But ultimately, uh, I think having that mindset of, growth and just like that's not everybody. Not everybody has that. And I do think that's one sort of key thing that I look for in my conversations is like how hungry are they to learn and grow? And so that's one piece of it. I guess another example is, and this is a little harder to gauge, and it's a little bit more of a, I guess, like the chemistry of the team is I'm always looking to add another skill to the team. We have a pretty small team. We're 8 right now, soon to be 9. Um, and with that, I want to find people who bring something new to the team. Like I said before, I'm in a lot of meetings. And while I have a fair amount of experience, the designers are going to learn from each other as much as they're going to learn from me. So if somebody can come in with like deep prototyping knowledge or deep UX experience, UX research experience, that benefits everybody in the team. Yeah, in the back. Yeah. I wouldn't say there's like a magic number. For me, 4 was like kind of a sweet spot. I have extended it now to 6, I think, on my current site. I'm maybe going to add one more. But the reality of like my role is like I'm going to look at 1 or maybe 2. So if you're showing like more than 4, 6, 8, 12, like you're kind of rolling the dice on what I might look at. Usually I'll pick the one at the top. Like my assumption is that that's your best thing. So I'll try to start there. But like I also can get distracted by pretty things. So like if I see something that looks interesting and maybe that's not your strongest work, you want to think about sort of again, like sort of that persona and that experience that you're trying to deliver. Like you want to direct them right to your best thing or the thing that maybe aligns best with the role you're applying for. Yeah. Cool. In front.
Hi, sorry, you said something about cover letters of how it really doesn't affect like how whether or not you actually like hire a candidate. I was wondering in like the practical sense, like would you have that mean like you don't apply and like don't have a cover letter, or you just don't like tailor it for the job?
I mean, the best practice, what everybody tells everybody is you should write a custom cover letter for every role. And I get that advice. I'm just telling you practically in my life, I don't often read them. Um, if you want to follow the book, and there's nothing wrong with following sort of the hiring book, the best guidance is like you should write a great cover letter for every role that you're serious about. I understand that. I don't discount that may move the needle in certain circumstances, but for me personally, it's just not something I have time to read, to be honest. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yep, in the middle there.
So,
Oh, thank you.
question. I saw you mentioned how much you didn't really go into detail on it, but you talked about like if somebody had a Netflix case study per se, and then they didn't work at Netflix. Like
Yeah.
for some of us recent graduates, we might have like been tasked to do like
Sure.
3 brands in our portfolio. Obviously, we didn't. That's not a real world project.
Yeah.
So, I mean, did that conceptual work like disqualify us in your mind for like a new designer?
No, I think it's about how you present it. So if you call it, like a exploratory project, Netflix rebrand, that kind of signals to me that, okay, they know that they didn't actually work at Netflix and this was like a school project. And I understand 100% if you're coming straight out of school, you're not going to have 5 amazing case studies to show me. And I'm very cognizant of that. I think I do have a bias towards like real projects versus school projects because real projects are messy. and things go sideways, and how you deal with how they go sideways is a big part of like what I want to know about you. So it's hard, and I often will talk to younger designers, and I encourage people a lot to like go do some volunteering, go do something where you can kind of like live in it. And yeah, just get that grit and grime of a real world project. So it doesn't discount it though. Like I think it's about like it just doesn't, I don't want it to feel like a bait and switch where like, oh, they did some Netflix branding, interesting. And then I'm in there, I'm like, oh no, this is not that at all. This is, yeah. So as long as you're presenting clearly, totally fine. Yeah. Cool. Adam.
And you mentioned several times starting with the work, looking at people's portfolio, starting there. Can you talk a little bit about what stands out as good work, specifically when you're looking at a people's portfolio?
Yeah. It does often depend on what I'm looking for. So recently we've been hiring a product designer, mid-level most likely. And what I was looking for is like, are they capable of doing highly complex, nuanced work with a lot of stakeholders, or, like maybe like multi-brand, I was looking for something like really deep. And so it depends on what I'm trying to, where I'm going. So like for my recent role, we were looking for somebody who can handle that kind of complexity. AOPS, we have like 5 or 6 digital products, depending on how you count them. Our designers kind of get thrown into a lot of situations, and they need to be able to navigate those worlds. So, we were looking for somebody who can basically handle that. And that's, maybe not everybody. So in that case, that sometimes, like I said before, like I'm looking for a new skill. Like, are they strong in visual design? And taste and aesthetics is kind of hard to measure. So I have my own subjective reaction to like a design quality bar. But ultimately, I'm looking for, yeah, it varies. So that's not a great answer. I apologize. Yeah. Another question. Yeah.
You mentioned resume just a tiny bit. Are you guys using algorithmic tools and feeding it specific keywords to get to even to the design review level?
We are not.
Okay.
I think that the talent acquisition team and HR has some tools that they will use to filter. They're looking for keywords, they're looking for experience level. But the way I kind of run my hiring process is like I let them do their filtering, but I try to look at all the work. I don't trust Brian's gone, right? I don't trust TA to look at portfolios. That's not what they're good at. I have to look at the portfolios. I have to look at the work. It's just not in their skill set. So it really is one of those things that I only trust my own eyes. Yeah.
Great to hear. Follow-up personal question. Did you have a chance to work with my team?
Ah, uh, I I worked at Extra Large, which is a clothing brand. It was actually my internship in college. And so the clothing company is owned by the Beastie Boys, but they basically just gave money. But I did get to go play basketball with them one day. And it was kind of amazing. I tried not to freak out the whole time. Yes. Yeah. And once they started playing, it sounded like a rap album, and it was really distracting. But I got a nickname out of it. They called me Philly because I was from Philly. So yeah. Any other questions? Yep. Oscar, go for it. Yeah.
Presentation.
Thanks.
Question is about text in a case study. Like we've all heard, it should be long, it should be short, it should be concise. But then there's the visual, but it catch your attention a lot more. What's your take on, should it be short and sweet? Do you actually get into paragraphs once you're interested? What's your POV of the walls of text that are very brief?
Yeah.
Texts, case studies.
If it's interesting, I'm in it, and I will read. I will admit I start by scanning. So I have noticed that a lot of case studies end up being very formulaic. You know, I I will say this right now, I don't need to see any more double diamonds. I know what a double diamond is. I know the process. I get that you used it. Cool. But like it kind of comes back to the sort of like, tell me a good story and then I'm invested. So uh I'm very happy to read a great story, and if it's like compelling and it adds value, I'm in. I will say, kind of balance that with, I have 5 minutes to look at this. So you got to find that sweet spot. Yeah. I think there was another question up here. Yep.
Hiring manager, how much importance to place on industry experience? You mentioned that you look at candidates.
Yeah.
But if they are industry, just not like, would you
Right.
to give them equal weightage to someone who's pretty good on the industry?
Okay. This is probably again a bit of an anomaly for me. I don't care what industry you worked in, and that's also my own personal bias because I've worked in every industry. So I'm like a bit of an oddball, maybe. There are people, even people within my team who like, no, they should have ed tech experience. And to be honest, I don't care. Um, I don't think ed tech has a special, you only can do this. Um, I think we're all capable of bridging gaps. For me, it's more about, are you curious about the problems that we're trying to solve here? And if you care about educating children, that's kind of important because that's what we do. You need to have some like interest in that. Otherwise, you're going to be totally bored by what we're working on. But like as far as like, have you built education materials? I don't really care. I'm really looking for taste, looking for complexity, looking for capabilities and new skills. So I don't care. But I do know other industries like the video game industry is notorious. Like they won't accept anybody who hasn't shipped 3 games. And I'm like, well, you're just cutting off most of the talent in the world. So good luck with that. There's another question up here. Yeah, there you go.
For a job that's like you know, strangers, probably felt like honestly.
Okay.
But it's because this, industry as a whole is definitely oversaturated in terms of job applications, but I feel like that's like exacerbated on entry level or even it's the job. For them to accept like interns or junior designers, a lot of them don't actually like post positions. So when I do find relevant positions to apply to, usually have like different applicants.
Yeah.
So I guess like in your opinion, like what's the best use, or, like the best like mixture of the use of my time in terms of like what's more helpful applying to people or sorry, messaging people and like actually applying for jobs.
Uh, I do think there is value in like that personal outreach. Um, I'm on a dozen different Slack channels, professional design channels, and of course, LinkedIn. People reach out to me all the time. I try to respond to almost everybody who reaches out to me with like a legitimate question. Sometimes that's takes me weeks, but I do try to respond. Um, it doesn't replace actually applying because ultimately, like, I will usually, if we have a conversation on LinkedIn, my final note there is going to be, you should officially apply, and I'll keep an eye out for you. And that's kind of basically the courtesy I will, sort of put out as, if we had a nice professional conversation, you showed interest, that tells me, okay, this person is somewhat motivated. They're doing the homework. And that's a good signal. And then the rest takes over. Like, is the work actually matching everything? So, I mean, this is the world we live in. It's like, I don't, I don't think it hurts to, send a personal note to somebody, and as long as it doesn't feel, like an obligatory thing or like that you're actually taking some consideration with that note. Uh, yeah, I don't think it's bad. I think it's And I guess your question of like how much time should you be spending on these things? I think it really boils down to like being strategic about what you want. So if there is a role that you're like, oh, this looks amazing, this is perfect for my interest, for my experience, like by all means, like find the 6 people who might give you an in there and just ask to have a chat, ask to have coffee. Like worst they're going to say is no. So I don't think it hurts anything. I meet people for coffee randomly, not opposed to that. I don't mind talking to smart, talented designers wherever you may be. I don't know what my next role opening is going to be, so I'm always keeping my eyes open for talent. Cool. There's another question over here somewhere in the yeah.
Thanks. So sorry, I might sound like a bit of an outlier in the room. I don't come from a creative
Sure.
profession in
Yeah.
the industry. I come from engineering background.
Okay.
Wanted to understand your comments about the passwords and the confidentiality.
Yeah.
So as someone who's not used to submitting a portfolio of work for engineering jobs with companies that may be competitive,
Sure.
are highly protective of their IP.
Yeah.
Did you mean specifically that you see folks satisfying their NDAs by providing only information that's behind the password?
Correct.
To,
That's what I've seen.
but they're satisfying their agreements.
I don't know if legally they are, but that's what it seems to be. Um, I I have one of my case studies hidden behind a password. I've debated just turning it off because I don't think it matters anymore. I don't know what the technicality is, but that seems to be sort of the MO of people. Like,
Okay.
I'll hide it behind a password and then I can share it. And I would go a little, like if I had an NDA, which I don't, I would probably go even a little more safe because I don't like that. I would do it in person. I would show somebody a case study in person um, if it was like really that sensitive versus just putting it online and password protecting it. It's usually the password's hello or something.
And are you seeing, to what degree do you see scrubbing for that?
I've seen that.
Impact would that have?
Yeah.
There's things I would love to share about my work, no matter what.
Sure.
Never.
I've seen that a bit lately, especially here in San Diego. We've had a few applicants who worked in military spaces. Like all of that's super sensitive. And I've seen some stuff where they're literally pixeling out or graying out things. It doesn't really affect my perception because I'm looking at UI, I'm looking at flows, I'm looking at like different things. So I don't get super bogged down in like I respect the fact that they're doing their due diligence and keeping things private where they need to. So yeah, I don't think it would affect my impression of the work. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Behind you in the black sweaty. Yeah. Hoodie. Yeah.
Okay, so my question is maybe not in this current landscape, but say in a scenario where you just hired somebody who has a lot of limited experience, a lot of limited.
Sure. Yeah.
They have the case studies from school and then maybe a project here and there. What did they do on their portfolio that made you hire them? What did they say in the interview, and like what did their first 3 months look like that made you glad you chose someone like that?
Okay. I can't say that's happened here recently because we haven't had any junior roles, even though I've been fighting for them. But I will say, like, at that level, like when you don't have a ton of experience, what I'm looking for is really that sort of aesthetic taste. Like, I'm trying to understand where they can get to. And so sometimes it's as simple as like, what did they choose to show me? Like I look at so many portfolios. I've seen so many Spotify redesigns. I've seen some like there's sort of like this formula of stuff, and it's like really hard for me to dive into those deeply. I really want to see something that like they feel strongly about. That like there's some personality coming through, so I can get a sense of like who they are. The only, I guess, recent experience, we had an intern last summer, and she just really had this like kind of distinct portfolio. It was like very different visually from a lot of the other stuff we saw. And then when we talked to her in person, she was just really engaged in what we were doing. She was super enthusiastic about AAPS, about education, and just had ultimately like, especially at the intern level, like energy. I want that energy of, and that's kind of like part of what an intern brings to the table. So I don't think that's the greatest answer I've ever given, but hopefully that's helpful. Yeah. Okay. There was another question. Okay, let's go here. Yeah.
I was hoping you double click on the portfolio presentation,
Mhm.
like how to differentiate between like the portfolio walkthrough you do when you're first candidate.
Yeah.
Is it beyond just the verbal storytelling that's going to come? What differences do you expect between the two? Is it sort of heightened visual storytelling, additional context, or different context? But it's the same project that you're.
Yeah. I am looking for more depth, usually. That's sort of the first thing. You know, a portfolio website version of a case study, if it's not 6 miles long, which sometimes they are, you know, hopefully I've gained enough from that that like I want to know more about this person. I want to know more about their process. And in the in part when they're presenting it verbally, you know, I really want to kind of understand the nuance of it. I want to understand decisions points with more context, with like, you know, what problems arose, how did they deal with stakeholders or collaborators. uh it's it is more depth for sure, but it's also a bit of like, I want to know a bit about the journey of that project. And I mean, most projects that we deal with, you know, they start with sort of one concept of where we're going, and then along the way things diverge wildly, and hopefully we get to some beautiful solution. But I want to know about that experience. Yeah. And it also is like, are they bringing people into it? Um, you know, I've experienced a lot of these lately where, you know, they're trying to get through their presentation, and they're not bringing us into that experience. And you know, they're not leaving space or time for the team to ask questions. And you know, I just want to find, you know, a good portfolio presentation is really a dialogue. It's not a monologue. Yeah. Yeah.
You had mentioned for the design role that you got 360 some applicants.
Yep.
So on LinkedIn, we see some particular role got over 100,
Mhm.
but we also read that some people are just blasting their resume out there and only actually 20 or 30% of those applicants are qualified for that role.
Yeah.
Did you find that to be true in that particular role?
I would say it's more like 50% for the recent role.
I know.
Yeah, like I'm taking a wild guess. I haven't done the sort of a deep evaluation, but I would say there were a lot of people aiming high. You know, it was a mid-level role with, we kind of posted it as a mid-level, and we were like, we're open to a senior. That's how we positioned it. And we got a lot of like straight out of grad school, no real world working experience, or you know, junior level talent. And some of those people I thought were great actually, and I kind of put them on a list of like, let's keep in touch. But yeah, we saw a lot of people who are sort of underqualified for the role. Yeah.
You guys had a lot of teachers.
Yes. This building is full of ex-teachers. And yeah, they have great context, and they're, I don't know, they're awesome assets here. So yeah. There was another question somewhere. Did we do it? All right. Cool. Awesome. Thank you all so much. Tons of amazing questions. So yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.